want to talk a little bit about what those cues are in terms of conversations that are going to let you know that you've got some loyalty issues in this family. Because loyalty becomes a problem when you have to place the needs of the children over that of who? Birth parents. Yeah, and if you're not able to do that, and because of those pre-existing relationships and pre-existing loyalties, that's when loyalty becomes a problem. So we're going to look at what those sources of loyalty are. We're going to also look at how do we help caregivers manage them, and again, what are some of those differences? So here's one. Usurping and replacing the birth parent's role, position, and authority. That's a big one. Split and dual loyalties for both the birth parent and the birth child. Feeling disloyal by placing the birth child's needs over that of the birth parents. You know, we did just go back to your attachment and bonding. That explains that. You know, their first initial attachment and loyalties are going to be to the birth parent before who? The child. So we go back to that. When disclosing negative information about the birth parent to agencies, to you, during those interviews, that can really feel like disloyalty. Foster parents and adoptive parents, they don't have that problem. You know, they'll go into intakes with the big folders. Well, now it's tablets. You know, they've got the history and they're sharing. They'll do those intakes with you. Relative caregivers, you got to remember, when a relative caregiver shares information about their family members, they're also sharing information about who? Themselves. Yeah, that's the hurt, that's the embarrassment. So yeah, when they're disclosing, they can feel as though they're being disloyal. It's the idea of knowing that they're disclosing information that might be used against who? The birth parent. That's the reason for the disclosure. That's the reason for the feeling of disloyalty, because the disloyalty then feels like betrayal. Pursuing permanent legal, you can see where that's coming from. I'm replacing. I'm going to be acting like you're not even in the picture any longer. I'm taking your authority. I'm taking your status. I'm taking your power. That's what's happening there. I'm changing that pre-existing relationship. Avoiding the child, allowing the child to develop attachments and bonds with the caregiver. That child starts calling the caregiver what? Mom. It's just that simple. And you have to allow it, you know. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. I know I've seen situations where the caregivers are aware of that and they're telling the kids, don't call me mom. You know, I'm not your mother. Call me Annie, you know, call me nanny, not mommy. You know, they have so many creative ways of dealing with that. But in the kids' minds, and when you see the kids alone with their peers, they're saying, oh, that's my, guess who? Mommy. Okay. It still comes out. And then when interactions about the family are dictated by the child's needs and agency's policies, procedures, yeah, that can be a big thing. When you legalize and formalize those relationships, you have to get background checks if you want to visit. You have to get a child abuse report and clearance if you want that child to come over to your home. You're going to have to go to a parenting class before you can have the children stay with you overnight. When you start asking for those requirements, you're now placing the needs of the children before that of the family, not just the birth parent, but other members in the family. So for us, it's just policies and procedures. This is what you need to do. For relative caregivers, it's issues of loyalty and disloyalty. It's issues of boundaries. It's issues of trust. I can't trust you to be with this child. You used to be able to trust me for her to stay overnight. Now you can't. You used to be able to trust me to do babysitting, and now you don't. I was good enough for her to be able to stay overnight before in the past, and now I'm not. That's the vulnerability caregivers are susceptible to. That foster parents and adoptive parents that aren't relatives don't have to be vulnerable to. But relative caregivers are vulnerable to that kind of response when they ask them to do the checks, the background checks. You know, you didn't have to supervise when she came over here before, and now you do. You know, I'm her aunt. What has changed? So for them, and then what makes it bad is when that person has to say, well, it's the agency. Well, who's in charge now? You or the agency? That's what they're vulnerable to. You know, we should be accountable to each other. I should be accountable to you. My word should be good enough. Before it wasn't. Can you hear the dialogue? So caregivers just have to be prepared for that. That's where the preparation, and you need to have those conversations about how is this child kinship care going to change my relationships and dynamics within the family. So sometimes that may be the focus of some of your visits. Because if they can't manage it, see, it becomes a safety and protection issue, because if they can't manage it, then they may end up calling up the agency saying, what? Come and get them. I can't put up with this. My family is being torn apart. I'm not going to lose my relationship with my husband, my sister over. Can you hear this? Can you hear the dialogue? So that's why this is a permanency issue. This is a protection issue, just not a nice little clinical issue. So here are your cues around loyalties. I can't see my child living on the street and not letting her in. She's always been there for me when I needed her. I can't put my brother out because of some criminal report. I can't choose between my son and grandchild when it comes to who can live with me. I can't ask my relatives to have background checks. In fact, I'm living in somebody else's home. My sister or family will never forgive me if I adopt this child. They'll never forgive me if I file a restraining order. They'll never forgive me. Can you hear the conversation? You have to ask my brother those personal questions. I have to know it's okay with them before I tell you. Yeah. And your assessments get at those cues. Well, how are you going to feel like if you have to petition for custody? How are you going to feel if you have to give information about the birth parent? How are you going to feel if you have to ask for criminal reports about people that are living in with you? Those are assessment questions. And if they say no, then what are you going to do? That's the litmus test. If they say no, what are you still going to do? Whose needs come first? So here's your goals. Got to prioritize who's first. And I'm not saying replace, but they got to prioritize whose needs come first. Redefining existing roles that they have with other family members. Develop responses. Know what those disloyalty triggers, just like the guilt triggers, they need to know what those disloyalty triggers are going to be that are going to make them change their mind and bend the rules and not follow through. What are the disloyalty triggers going to be? And then how to stop looking at that birth parent as a child, as a brother or a sister, and start looking at them as what? Adults. That's hard. So here's your scripts. Here are your conversations. Prioritizing the child becomes crucial. They start saying things like, I can't let them stay out. I have to let them in. This is my child. They were there for me. You may have to have one of those responses of, well, whose needs, who needs you the most? That's important because you're not arguing with them. I used to make the mistake. See, I have to tell you my mistakes. That way you'll know why this means something. I used to have them talk. I used to make the mistake of, well, you can't keep dealing with them as a child, and you can't stop them. You can't look at them as needing you. You have to stop infantilizing them. My response after a while said, yeah, they need you, but who needs you the most? Yeah, they need a place to stay, but who needs you the most? Yeah, who's less able to take care of themselves? Yeah, they need you to take care of them, but who's less able to take care of them? And yeah, they need you to help them, but whose turn is it now? You see where that came from? I don't deny that they need them. I don't deny that you love them. I don't deny that you still owe them. I don't deny the attachment and bonding, but whose turn is it now? Who needs you the most? Who needs you first? And sometimes none of that works. Sometimes you may have to say, but who does the court expect me to care for first? Sometimes that's the wake-up call, okay? So redefining the roles. You can't be parents to both. You may lose both if you can't. Who needs you in the home the most? Because sometimes getting them to look at what their pattern has been in the past and how it now needs to change. You always let them come over when they didn't have a place to stay. You were always there when they were being evicted. You always co-signed if there was a problem. This situation, you were always there. If she overdosed and you went to the hospital, you were always rescuing and enabling. You know those terms, okay? You were always the martyr. Now we're going to change it, and you're going to do things differently. And the one that's the most important is, what are you going to do differently now that you're caring for that niece and nephew? Your role is to now take care of this child. That's your priority. You help her by taking care of the child. You help him by taking care of the child. You help her with the homelessness by taking care of the child. So I love using that one when they need to know what their new role is and what they need to say to the birth parent. Babe, I can't help you right now. I can help you by taking care of this child, but I can't help you with doing X, Y, and Z. I know you need help with that. Let's look at who else in the family can help you. But the best way I can help you right now is to take care of. See what happens? Yeah. You've got a new role. You've got a new priority. And then not infantilizing the child. I know your son will always feel you will always feel your son or daughter is your child, and that's normal. But who will the courts and the agencies expect you to take care of first? That is so crucial. It normalizes it. Fine, you can still connect them. See, because I was using words like, you're enabling, or you're enmeshed. I go clinical, all right? You have problems with boundaries. No, let them have all that. But who do the courts expect you to take care of first? You don't get scapegoated, you don't get into the argument. You're just being reality for them. And you may see him as a child, but the courts and agencies see them as. All right. And by the way, it's not pathology. It took me a while to realize that too. It's not pathology for caregivers to feel and to look at them as their children. Well, let's make it personal. Your mom and dad will always look at you as what? Their child. I don't care how old they are, how old you are. My mom finally told me where the key was to the safety deposit box. I'll never forget that. She's passed now, but I'll never forget the moment she finally told me where the key was to the safety deposit box. And I asked her, why did you do that? I said, wasn't I able to do that earlier? She said, well, you're old enough now. I was 60 years old, folks. 60. 59, I wasn't old enough yet. But at 60, she felt, you're old enough to know now. See what I mean? So yeah, that's my example of you always look like a child. So it's not pathology, it's just what they do, okay? So, in summary, those cues, I can't let them be on the street. They've always been there. I've always been there for them. That's my son, that's my daughter. I have to be responsible. That's the cues. Have those conversations. Whose turn is it now? Who do you need to care for first? If not you, then who? That's the script. Those are the conversations. Yes, you can still keep looking at them as a child, and it's okay, but how does the court feel about them? All right, so those are the scripts. Those are the conversations. And again, it's that pre-existing relation, that attachment that's going to keep them loyal, and it's not pathology. Okay, well, thank you very much.